brief introduction. We'll get to some issues. We're looking, since you're both incumbents and highly experienced politicians, we'll be looking for both of you to distinguish yourself from your opponent. So if you want to follow up or disagree or rebut, please be polite and please don't speak over your opponent, but we do welcome engagement between the two of you. Why don't we get started with you, Senator Kinnemer. Tell us a little bit about yourself, where you grew up, what you've been doing before today, and why you want to keep your job.
Okay. We were poor folks, farmers, and moved a lot. I was born originally in Sacramento, California. As an infant, we moved to Oregon and Albany, Corvallis. Ultimately, when we went bankrupt, we moved to Central California and were homeless for a period of time, and then ended up on small acreage in Santa Cruz, California.
Is at what age?
That would be 7. We moved back to California and graduated from high school. Came up to Portland to Church College, Warren Pacific. Graduated in '68. Went to graduate school. Spent 2 years at Fuller Seminary. Was going to be a minister. Decided that wasn't a very good choice.
Why was that not a good choice for you?
It's a long question, but I don't know. I worked in a couple of churches, and I found it was difficult work, and I guess it's a long story. I can get into that if you really want to.
That's all right.
So then I transferred into the School of Psychology. And so I thought instead of kind of doing church work, I could work one-on-one or family-on-family, and graduated with a PhD in 1976, and moved back here to Oregon because I always had loved Oregon from my childhood in '75.
And what your practice was? What?
In general psychotherapy and family work. Marriage and family.
And you've retired now, but
yes.
When did you stop practicing?
Let's see, about 99.
Okay, so it's been a while.
It's been a while.
So I'm sure you went over your varied career with Mark, but now that the camera's on, if you could just reprise one of the longest political careers of any current politician, I would think, in Oregon.
Mm-hmm.
Tell us when you were first elected to what? And
Sure. I was first elected in 1986, and that was an interesting race. I ran against a 12-year incumbent Democrat senator who had a 13-point registration advantage.
Larry Solo.
No, Walt Brown.
Oh yes, Walt Brown, who was not a Democrat. He was a socialist.
Thank
right?
you. I would accept your acknowledgement.
I met Walt subsequently.
And he ended up running for governor, I think.
Yeah, and several other
things.
He
was a delightful fellow.
He was a very interesting fellow. I would have to concur with that. But he was a very serious, extreme person, and he didn't fit the blue-collar district. And to almost everybody's surprise, I beat him by 6 points.
Right.
So that was a really important thing. And incidentally, that was kind of a transforming moment for me, because that night when I won, which was kind of, we weren't sure in those days and didn't do good polling and all that kind of stuff, it dawned on me that there were very few independents in those days, or non-affiliated. And it dawned on me a huge number of Democrats had crossed to vote for me. There was no way I could have won otherwise. Yeah. And that was just one of those, we call them critical events, where I realized that I was not there to represent my party, I was there to represent the folks. And the folks had indicated they wanted a change. So from there I spent 10 years then in the Senate. In '95 we moved to the majority, and then my wife in the meantime had been diagnosed with cancer. And so one day I came home and she said, honey, time for you to get a real job. Because she had gone back to teaching full-time to help supplement our income. And so I looked around, and I was starting to build my practice up, and then I thought, no, I'll run for county commissioner. So I ran for county commissioner, served 3 terms there. And I think one of the big achievements there was I recognized we were providing services in 20 different facilities. And that was a lousy way to do it.
Who was on the county commission with you?
Ed Lindquist, Darlene
Was
Hooley
Shoemaker
preceded
on
me.
there?
No, I came just after Shoemaker.
Okay.
Yeah.
Right.
And-
So if you look back at your career, can you point to 1 or 2 legislative accomplishments that you're most proud of?
You know, I think the one that I'm really the most proud of is back in my 2nd session in the legislature. As a psychologist, I kept seeing a lot of single moms, and most of them were having horrible financial problems. And I changed the way we collected child support. And there was in 1989, it was the #1 reason kids fell into poverty was failure to secure child support. And so we changed the rules about that, and I think that has had a profound effect on
In terms of
our
making it
society.
easier to collect?
Yes, well, we have a very high collection rate nowadays.
Gotcha. And just out of curiosity, what can you dumb it down? What was it that changed?
Well, we allowed going directly against salaries,
So you could basically garnish.
garnishing. We'll
So
garnish if
prior
people
to,
don't.
so
And
I hate to say it, I've
Yeah.
had some employees here who've had their wages garnished
Yeah.
for child support.
yeah,
But you're saying prior to that year, you
they
couldn't
could
do that?
not do that.
And what year did you pass that?
89.
Okay.
Yeah,
And you were sponsor or co-sponsor of that bill?
I was the chief sponsor.
Gotcha.
Why do you want to keep doing what you're doing?
Well, you know, I guess it's people wonder why in the world did I go back, and I was tired and ready to go away when I did. And what happened is, well, of course, you're interested in politics, you follow what's going on. And when Olson decided to retire early, I started getting some phone calls. And there were 2 that were particularly critical in my thinking. They were from prominent elected Democrats. And they said, Bill, you know, things are really out of hand, and it would be really good to have someone with a little bit of experience and a little moderation.
You want to tell us who those prominent Democrats were?
I don't think I can do that.
I think you can.
I don't want to
All right.
put them in. If you want off the record, I could tell you. I mean, I'm happy to tell you who they were, but I just don't want to put them in an awkward position. Sometimes some people would see that as compromising.
But even
their-
they and others sort of persuaded
And they
you.
and a whole bunch of others called and said, you know, Bill, you know, the Republicans are at that position of voting no on everything as a protest, and it's so dysfunctional. And we need someone to bring a little bit of balance and common sense and experience. And Sherry and I spent a fair amount of time talking about that because it was quite a change. We were sort of enjoying retirement. COVID had hit, so that was another variable. But thought, well, yeah, you know, it was a good experience before. Maybe it would be time to go back for a while.
So, just one last question before we let your opponent speak. When you left previously, you really got angry, as I recall. In fact, when I was looking at your C&Es, I remember you did that independent expenditure. You were so angry. Can you recall what you were so angry about?
You know, I can't remember. There was a triggering event, and I don't remember exactly. I think it had to do with not being able to move some legislation.
Yeah.
But the you know, power over time evolves, and I think at that point we were back in a very difficult time when decisions were being made in the House that were essentially purely partisan. And I guess at some point, you know, you get tired of fighting that battle, and it doesn't seem like a good battle, and Also, if you're not being successful, you probably got to do something else.
Okay. Representative?
Just one more, just a question we're asking a lot of Republicans.
Yeah.
Do you believe that Joe Biden is our president and that he was dutifully elected?
Yes.
Representative Meek,
Thank you. Yeah.
please introduce
You
yourself.
just got me in trouble with
With the party?
with a little of it, you know.
One question I should have asked Senator Kennemer was, just since we have a new district, for the benefit of our large viewing audience, could you describe the geographic boundaries of the new district, please?
Yes, I will. Well, first of all, my name is Mark Meek, and I'm the state representative from House District 40, Oregon City, Gladstone, Jennings Lodge, and Johnson City, unincorporated Clackamas County. And my House district has been that, as the current outlay is, it stayed very much, pretty much the same. The only difference was that when they drew it, they drew Senator Kennemer into my district because he was in District 39 at the time. And then the rest of the district moved from the south all the way north, including, basically just a wide swath from Oregon City north to include Happy Valley, unincorporated part of the Damascus areas that was annexed by Happy Valley over off 172nd, all the way to the Multnomah County border. Previous to this, that House district, which was Janelle Bynum's House district, included Southeast Portland. So Multnomah County and Southeast Portland are no longer in this, so it's all concentric Clackamas County, heading down to Fuller Road and Linwood. And the reason I know this, I've been knocking on in every community since I decided to run. So
How many doors do you think you've hit so far?
5,000, pretty darn close.
Yourself?
Yes, myself. Yeah,
Wow.
myself.
Wow. Your hand getting tired?
Yeah, my shoulder hurts because I think I threw it out. But no, yeah.
Tell us, give us your brief bio, please.
Yeah, it's interesting. My dad was a Marine vet, served 2 terms in Vietnam. And my mom and him were married almost 7 years when things just fell off the rails. My dad experienced a lot of PTSD. He lived in Yakima, Washington area, and we kind of would travel and live there for a little while. My mom lived in we grew up in the Los Angeles area. We never made it that far down, but we did live in the Roseville area a couple of times, in Sacramento area. And when they split, I ended up being one of these children that was basically going back and forth, and to positions of just poverty, welfare, food stamps. Free lunch was sometimes the best meal of the day. I let people know that it's amazing that I can even read, which is why I'm such a big, strong supporter of public education, is because by the time from when I was kindergarten to 7th grade, I had been in 18 different schools, 3 different states, and in about 12 different cities, back and forth and back and forth. And there was a time there where I didn't even attend school for about 3 months because my mom, we were homeless down in the Los Angeles.
So where'd you go to high school?
And that's even the biggest thing. So you can tell I had not a lot of stability. So my freshman year, I go to Washington Monroe, a brand new school in 1978. I stayed there for 3 years. We were, the kings of the campus, getting ready to graduate, and Portland Public Schools decided to close Jackson High School. Well, actually not Jackson, but Adams High School, Washington Monroe. So we had a lot of us, I want to call student refugees, that went to Grant, Cleveland. I ended up going to Franklin High School.
For your senior year?
My senior year, fantastic senior year. But but fortunately I had been used to adapting and responding. So they say that part of your leadership qualities come from your experiences in life, and also my take on what I think is necessary to be done, and where I think a lot of our families and community need help and support. Those experiences lead me to do the work that I've been doing. I'm not sure if you wanted me to go into my political career now.
Well, we'd like to. So, where'd you go to college?
Oh yeah, okay. Oh, good. So, friends of mine, I remember my senior year, asked me, where are you going to college? Where are you going to college? I was homeless my senior year. I actually had written my own self. I was emancipated, or whatever you want to call it. So when I was late for school, I'd write my own note saying, sorry, I was late, bus was late, I couldn't get here. Didn't even have school clothes to wear. You know, I was wearing baggy clothes, and it was a tough time. So I didn't want to be poor anymore, and my birthday, in March of 1982, I went to the recruiter's office and looked at the different, services to join, and I joined the Air Force.
Right out of high school.
Right out of high school, and so.
Did you go to the academy?
No, I wish. No, I went to the basic training over in San Antonio, in Lackland Air Force Base in San Antonio, Texas. And went into law enforcement, security police. I wanted to give back, wanted to serve at that level, and it was something that you can do physically and learn. And so I went into the security police academy. Was stationed in Malmstrom Air Force Base in Great Falls, Montana. Got married a year later. I've been married for 38 years now, and people said it wouldn't last, but I have the most just beautiful, gracious woman in the world. When we got married, she said, well, I'm taking classes. So she inspired me to start going to college. So I started taking part-time courses. I was full-time Air Force, and started taking a couple of part-time classes to see, can I do this? One thing I did learn about the military, they showed that I did have some brains in my head, on my shoulders, and that I could actually be successful if I applied myself. So through that process, worked my way through college. By the time I finished my 8 years in the Air Force, and it was with Park College in Missouri, they had a satellite. I attended the College of Great Falls, but we transferred the courses through the Air Force process, the military process, to Park College, Missouri. Never stepped foot in Missouri, but I got the degree from Park College. And actually, my senior year, I finished at Portland State, transferring all of those classes to Park College.
What'd you get a degree in?
Business administration and computer information systems.
Gotcha. Okay, so ramp up and tell us about your professional career and.
Yeah. Okay. So after getting my degree, I was hot ready to do something with business. Where am I going to go? My father was a friend of the owner of a tavern on 35th and Hawthorne, and I grew up on Hawthorne there, and I remember being afraid to walk next to this tavern because there was a bunch of row of bikes and bikers out there, and a little rural and scary, so I would walk across the street to get home if I had to. Come home, and Hawthorne's building up. The McMinimans just started doing their things with microbrews. My dad's friend owned this tavern. I guess he was at risk of losing it for licensing reasons. I had no idea. My dad asked me if I wanted to buy it. I didn't have a single dime to my name, but I had good credit. My wife and I had established good credit. We took withdrawals of cash withdrawals from our credit cards to buy that tavern,
What was the
run
name of the tavern?
Mark's Hawthorne Pub. Mark's Hawthorne Pub.
What was it when you bought it?
A Hawthorne Pub, so I had to change it to Mark's Hawthorne Pub.
Okay.
And over the next 2 years, I became a great neighborhood pub, and we had live music, brought in the microbrews, gave great customer service, and we got rid of the element that was, selling drugs there, and basically not really providing a good neighborhood.
What is it now?
It's called Mulligan's.
Oh, yeah.
And I sold it
Yeah,
to
I know.
Pete Goforth, him and his family, when I decided to sell. Yeah.
What year was that?
1995.
Why'd you get out of that business?
That right around 1995, my son was turning 6, and I would pick him up from, I would work until 2 o'clock in the morning, and I would pick him up from grade school at 3 o'clock. We'd eat dinner, and I'd be to work by 6, working from 6 to 3 every day, and probably longer on weekends. But and so having him get involved with just kindergarten and different things, I determined that I wanted to get into a business or some type of career that would better allow me to be more available in his life. So in 1996 got into real estate, and that actually has been a great business because through that process I committed to being able to serve him and coach him, be the athletic director for our school, sing in our church choir, and through all these, the mechanics that I learned through the military to volunteer and serve, I got a lot more out. And so over the years, that service has evolved into, committing to my community, nonprofits, Clackamas Community, the Clackamas County Planning Commission, Clackamas County Economic Development Commission, and that was in the, 2010, 12, something like that.
So take us through your political career.
Political career. So just being involved, part of my work as a real estate agent and realtor was being involved with my political action committees and chairs, Government Affairs Committee. I was the chair of the PMARS, Government Affairs Committee. And through that process, I ended up being the key constituent to my state representative, which at the time was the Speaker of the House, Dave Hunt. So, under that, my work, I introduced myself. I would go to his town halls. I've met him at Capitol, Realtor Day at the Capitol, and I always would advocate on different issues that were important to realtors, home ownership, and the rest. So after that, then Brent Barton gets elected, and I became his key constituent. So I had great relationship with him. One day, Realtor Day at the Capitol, I think it was 2014 or 15, he goes, Mark, I might be hanging up my cleats on this. And my realtor buddies go, hey, Mark, you should think about running. And so that planted the seed. And at the time, Brent even said, that's kind of an interesting take on it. That'd be interesting. I see how that would work. Me as a realtor, being a Democrat, would resonate with the party. Mm-hmm. So as it was, I had a three-way competitive race in the primary, knocked on thousands of doors then to win that, and then knocked on thousands more. And I get out of that just a great feedback from the community. One of all, they appreciate my willingness and dedication to get to know them.
So I'm sorry, you were first elected in what year?
2016. I was sworn in 2017.
Gotcha.
So I'm a relative newcomer in this.
Yeah, and now you're deciding to step up to the Senate.
Yes, sir.
And why?
Yeah. I feel that Senator Kennemer's predecessor was very unwilling to support our communities and the things that they need. If you look on his record, I don't know if he voted yes on any legislation that I've been on and been either on or sponsored, co-sponsored for his remaining years. And our community has not received the proper type of representation, the kind of public service, servant representation that it deserves. So now, when this position came available with the redistricting, I figured it's the work I've been doing in my community, at the church and the schools and just youth sports and things. It was really, all of that work was in where the new district is, in Clackamas and Happy Valley. Mm-hmm. I was the chair of the North Clackamas Chamber of Commerce, which is right there in Happy Valley, right there in Clackamas. And so my business has been there. I've helped people buy and sell homes, manage properties for them. So this was just an extension of, hey, this is my backyard. Let me see how this works.
So same question we asked Bill, can you point to one or two legislative accomplishments that you're proudest of?
Yeah. I think I mentioned that I had been evicted before. Mm-hmm. My family had been evicted. I'd been at the door as a kid with the police knocking on the door and my parents telling me not to answer the door and letting them go. Water being shut off. So I've experienced homelessness and I've experienced being evicted. And so one of the biggest things that I did in my career was in 2017 willing to vote for tenant protections and rent controls and eliminating no-cause evictions. It didn't pass in 2017.
I'm sorry, was this your bill, or are you just saying you voted for it?
No, this is one of the bills I carried and supported. Yeah, it was not my bill. It was the speaker's. It was one of the speaker's priority bills. But the fact that a realtor, property manager, landlord was willing to jump in and do this was...
well, I assume every other member of the Democratic Party voted with you.
Oh, yeah, they did.
Yeah.
But it didn't pass in the Senate.
Right.
And so after I showed that, my realtors and background that, hey, I'm going to be voting for people of Oregon and people of my community, mm-hmm. They came out with me with hundreds of thousands of dollars in 2018 to defeat me in that race. Didn't happen.
2019. They had basically bankrolled your 2016 race, right?
My primary.
So then they flipped on you and tried to take you out of it.
In
Exactly.
2018?
In 2018.
And who did you run against in 2018?
Josh Hill.
Yeah. So back to my question though, any bills that you have been the primary sponsor of that have passed that you can say Oregon's a better place because I was there and I came up.
Yeah, and I've passed many, so I'm going to have to, kind of dig in and figure out. One of the things I passed was helping seniors, and I was the only one to both introduce this and advocate for it, and I wasn't successful in 2017, and I think I finally got it across the finish line of 2019. I don't know the bill number, but it was related to the tax deferral program for seniors. There is a mechanism that some of our families had reverse mortgages, some of our seniors have reverse mortgages. Well, because the bank account or the funding that provides for the tax deferral system for seniors was getting a little bit low.
Yep.
They eliminated our seniors on reverse mortgages from being able to access that. I advocated for that and had to even come up across, Betsy Johnson, Elizabeth Steiner Hayward, a lot of these other folks that didn't like reverse mortgages, which had nothing to do with it. Our families had already, chosen that path, but we were not able to give them relief on that. Well, we got that passed, and that made that available for all, and it was for a short period because they missed an exemption time that they were able to go in and refund and get those tax deferrals so that they could afford to remain in their homes. So that would have been one. Oh goodness, I know that there are more that I helped with our veterans, and oh goodness sakes, yeah,
Okay.
I've basically both housing and veterans.
Gotcha.
I've been a big supporter of.
I didn't get to a second bill, just in this discussion, if I could.
Okay.
I think the second major bill that I had a big hand in was House Bill 2009, the Health Authority Bill. Mitch Greenlick and I worked on that. And I and Greg Smith were the only Republicans that supported it.
Huh.
And another issue that I neglected to...
So that bill, I forget, that bill
2019.
it created the Oregon Health
It
Authority?
created the Oregon Health Authority.
Okay.
And did major changes for our whole healthcare system, brought a whole lot of people in. The couple of other things that I should have mentioned is I'm also endorsed by the Independent Party, and they said of me that I had the most bipartisan record of any legislator. That's from their information, and also endorsed by the Libertarian Party.
Tell us about a bill where you bucked your party. We know about Representative Meek bucking the realtors, and they tried to primary him. So tell us a time that you really took a lot of heat for voting against a Republican bill, or voting with a Democratic.
Well, I think, the one that I just mentioned, the healthcare bill, everybody else was opposed to it. This is socialized medicine and all that kind of was the argument. So that's probably the major one. I'm like with Mark on the moment, it's hard to kind of figure, but I can tell you there've been a number of bills like that, because I vote with my people, not my party.
So
ultimately.
Go ahead.
Yeah.
Well, along those lines,
Yeah.
I asked you earlier if you thought Joe Biden was duly elected, and
Yeah.
you smiled, but
Yeah.
you're aware that we're asking a lot of Republicans that who come to our office and they say no. So
Yeah.
here's my question: what happened to your party?
How long do we have?
We got a couple minutes.
I don't
I mean,
know what happened to our party. I guess it got Trumpified. And, I liked his policies, but I tell you, he was in office a matter of weeks, and I sent him a letter. Of course, I'm sure he never saw it. But I talked about, you don't insult people. Public officials don't call people names. He just got progressively outrageous. And there's a portion of our party that, there are conservatives, and frankly, I think Representative Meek has people in his party that get as far off on the fringe left as my people get off on the fringe right.
So let's talk about a particular tactic that's become increasingly common in Salem. That is the walkout.
Mm-hmm.
So I can't remember have you been a part of a walkout?
No. We had quite a discussion about a walkout when I returned, and I felt like that was one of the changes that I was instrumental in helping. We did not walk out. There were those who wanted to. In fact, I guess several didn't attend a meeting or two, but but there was no serious walkout.
So there are people who say, look, it's legal, it's within the realm of
Well, I have trouble with, if you're getting there with the ballot measure, I have some troubles with the ballot measure, because I think the voters probably ought to decide whether people should be sitting in those seats or not. And I guess the other one that I think is germane with that is Texas, kind of the opposite state. The Democrats walked out of there and created quite a stir.
right. I mean, we know that Oregon Republicans walked out. Oregon Democrats walked out within recent memory. It was like the early 2000s. Kate Brown was part of it.
Right.
But so your point is that you just don't think it's an appropriate tactic for either party to use.
No, I think it's complicated, but I think for the most part, you're there to work and represent the people. But there is kind of a tyranny of the majority if there isn't some balance. And I think that's part of what's occurred in our legislature. We've had a lot of years of same party rule, and after a while you start thinking that you have all the right answers and don't include opinions that are different. And I think a good legislative process is one of balance and finding common ground. I think this is where my experience and training as a psychologist helps. We talk about it, and I loved it. I think one of the most important things I had in my training was my first class session in marriage and family therapy. The professor says, "You'll do a better job if you remember all people are basically incompatible." And I've just cherished that. And it's helped me in my professional work. Incompatible. And, the only reason we get along is because we work together. Mitch and I pulled off the health authority because we worked together. And we had common ground, and we found where it was. And that's something that if you're not careful with one party rule, doesn't happen.
Okay.
So, one of the things that we look for when making endorsements is a degree of independence from one's own party. We're not interested in just promoting robots who will always vote the Republican way or the Democratic way. Clearly, you're a little bit at odds with your party simply because of how far off the ropes it's gone.
And the most bipartisan legislator in the last legislative session, according to their analysis.
I'm still, Mark, telling me that you went against the realtors is one thing.
Yeah.
I want examples where Democrats were wrong and you stood up and you said, "No, I'm sorry. You've gone too far."
Well, let me answer that directly, and I also want to retort on his statement that he loves balance, because there's a bill that he passed this year was not balanced, and as you guys know, short session is one of the most compacted legislative times to get anything done, and he brought one of the most controversial bills, we call it fondly known as the wakeboard bill. When he talks about balance, one thing I learned in real estate was riparian rights. Riparian rights mean that all Oregonians have access to the rivers and streams of our state, up to the high water mark of the land, so that even a $1 million property owner that has $1 million house can't tell you to get off that beach, because that's Oregon's land. Those are our waters and streams. He passed a bill that, when he talks about balance, that eliminated the use of certain types of weights of boats or wakeboards up in the upper Willamette.
Oh, sure. No, I'm very familiar with this.
Yeah, and
you probably got a lot of support from the environmental community.
Yes,
I
he
did.
Yeah, and
Mark's only negative environmental vote. He voted against the bill.
Yeah, and that's a vote. That's I guess hits two things at the same time. But what I wanted to say is that there were over 70 people that testified in each committee that were basically letting everybody know that there needs to be balance. A lot of the homeowners even said, "Hey, these are our docks. We want to have." So if you think about the 30-some miles of river miles on that stretch of river, only 3 river miles were any place that they could actually do the wakeboarding.
Yep.
So
Yeah.
this eliminated the access to even get on that section of the river.
So you voted against his wakeboarding bill?
Yes, I did.
And where were most Democrats on that bill?
They were all yes, but there was not a single
So-
Republican.
So you just given us an example where Bill went again. I mean, seriously, it was a great. I have two very Republican friends who live on the Willamette River who hate him for that.
No, I know that.
Right.
So
So
why did you vote against the bill?
I didn't, well, two things. I was very open to having some type of limitations, weight restrictions. The biggest thing that I had advocated for and asked for in an amendment was that we have, if you look in the language, it says the Oregon State Marine Board may conduct a study to see if this is even, if these activities are even eroding the shorelines.
Right.
Where you would find that more of the vegetation and the soils and the different runoffs of these properties have more of an effect on eroding our shorelines. But instead of putting shall, they put in may.
Okay.
And the Marine Board asked for some funding. They said, we don't have the funding mechanism to do this on our own. So you saying may is not helping us to even give any answers. So any kind of decision I would make, I want to make based on science and actuality.
Let's get back to my question. An example where you bucked your party.
Yeah, well, a couple of times. More recently, this year, or no, last year, was the, I don't remember the bill number, but it was allowing, legalizing camps to be set up anywhere for homelessness.
3115, I think. Yeah.
Yeah. And I voted no on that because, and to a T, these 5,000 voters I'm talking to and these 5,000 doors, I'm having about a 30% answer rate. So I got like 1,500 people I actually talked to,
Good.
voters. About 35% of them are all worried about homelessness and public safety. And I let them know that I am just as concerned. I tell them about the things I've tried to do to help our families that are experiencing homelessness and try to get them support, and also about funding our police and giving our public safety officers the funding and training they need. But the camping thing was a big deal, so that was one. And then a lot of folks forget that during the 2020 special sessions, we had a lot of moving parts, and one of them was landlords were they passed a bill that said landlords are only going to get 80% compensation if their tenants or they ask for relief for past due rents. I had fought that and said, well, why are landlords, and you can look on the floor, my floor speech, to say, why are landlords having to bear a brunt of this at no fault of their own? Some of them are small business owners trying to just navigate and survive on their own. Why are they having to take an 80% hit? I voted no on it then, and with the brilliance of people seeing the inequities of it in 2021, they reversed that and gave 100% relief to landlords. So I was the first to come out and not be afraid to really let them know that that was an inequity.
Why do you think your party passed that camping bill? Because the Boise versus Martin decision already exists. So what do you think?
I think that to codify it somehow, to make it more, more acceptable for the communities to embrace it, or to say this is legal now. I'm not sure, because when it comes to the Boise case, our public officials that are trying to maintain, order in our communities and order in our, with our homeless population. The biggest thing about that, you cannot ask somebody to move along if you don't offer a bed or a unit for them to be at. And I don't know if they thought that this would try to help solve that. Actually, I think it's more appropriate that we actually do what we can. We do have churches and nonprofits that are willing and want to, provide spaces.
I want to ask you a couple of real estate questions.
Yeah.
What's the public policy benefit of having a mortgage interest deduction on a second home?
Public policy, I think over the years, it has been a mechanism that made it affordable for homeowners to get into their
Why
homes.
should the state government be subsidizing my ability to buy a vacation home?
I don't know, and through the brilliance of folks that came way before me, and I want to say, almost 100 years ago.
Would you support removing? I mean, some Democrats have called for removing the mortgage interest deduction on second homes in Oregon.
On second homes, might be open to it, but not on first homes.
Okay. What's the public benefit of a 1031 exchange? And why?
There's a great benefit to it, and I'll explain because I've done it myself. I've helped my clients navigate those. If you think about a business wanting to either sell and reinvest in this community, when you have capital gains, so you have a property and it's appreciated over time, and now you want to, I'll use the term everybody knows, you're moving up from houses to hotels and
I
monopoly.
understand how a 1031 works, but if I have stock and I sell it and I buy more stock, I don't get to defer that gain. In other words, real estate is treated as a different asset class for tax purposes.
Right, and the difference
and I'm
is-
asking why a 1031
And I wanted
exchange
to
makes
explain
public
that
policy.
because those dollars, okay, so you have a transaction, the house sells, the person goes and buys another property,
Right.
and every real estate transaction they have, maybe a stockbroker makes money when you do that kind of exchange, but we have real estate agents, we have lending mortgage brokers, we have inspections, appraisals, electricals, plumbers, everybody's doing different work. And it is actually, I think there's a great benefit of it, because if they didn't allow that, they would just remain there and not invest more money. Their equity would remain in that little small piece of property, and they would have no incentive to try to sell it, to invest and buy more. And a lot of times they're selling
But
it,
again,
giving.
that's the only asset class that's treated that way. Why does real estate get? Why do people who own this building? I can turn around and sell this building. If it was a stock, I'd have to pay capital gains on the gain.
Mhm.
But instead, if I invest in another building, I don't have to pay any of those taxes. So I'm just, there have been a number of Democrats that have questioned the public policy benefit. You're a realtor.
And I've tried to support it just now.
Okay.
You're saying because there's a distribution of wealth, because the buyers.
It provides jobs, it provides economic development, it actually does provide economic development. And in economic development, any community is pushing, the benefit for all people in those communities.
Yeah.
Okay.
Let me, if I could, go back. Mark had quite a bit to say about my weight bill.
Right.
And it's interesting because in 2021, he introduced House Bill 2155 with a 4,000 pound weight limit, which is less than 1,500.
I'm sorry. What would that bill do?
His bill had a 4,000 pound weight for the boat. Mine had.
Then if it was more than 4,000 pounds?
Yes, it would not be allowed.
Yeah.
And mine 1589 was with 5,500 pounds. But there's an interesting irony here, because he was obviously a supporter of it, and then when he decided to run for re-election, for election to the Senate, he suddenly is a horrific opponent of the weight bill. And I just wanted to point that out. I thought that was interesting. And his signs are at the boat dealers now, and they've got quite a pack going. You might want to investigate their new pack. So
Yeah,
that's
but I
kind
guess
of-
what the
and I guess-
senator didn't care to look at was that with that original bill, it started a lot of conversations with both the proponents and opponents. And there was two competing bills at the same time. And I didn't know that, I don't know if it was Representative Witt or whoever else had the same bill. I amended my bill to raise that weight limit to 7,500. And then my bill died in committee, and they threw out, and they moved forward Representative Witt's bill. And this was the 2020, I think 2019.
So your bill how would your bill have been different from the bill?
It would have required, would have required, shall do a Marine boards that shall do a study on the impacts of wakeboards or any type, wake boats or any type of, wave, impact on the shorelines. And then also, it would have put a temporary period of time on it so that we could bring back the results and make a decision. Is that 7,500 relevant? Is it even, does it matter? Or what was going
So
on?
you don't like his bill because it didn't do a study,
Yes.
but you both agree that there may be a problem? I'm confused at this point.
No, I agreed that we wanted to mitigate any potential harms or damage during that study time, and then come back to the table, not just fully eliminate it based on no science background at all, or find out what are some other, extenuating circumstances that could be, affecting these. So I was wanting to make sure, let's put a pause on this, let's put a restriction on this initially, and see, do the study, let's get some feedback, let's get some unbiased, background and scientific data that tells us what really is occurring there.
Gotcha.
And is this the culprit of, this erosion?
Let me say a couple of things, if I can. The weight bill controversy, actually, as far as I can tell, started back about 2010, so it's not a new issue. But I think there are a couple of other issues that we ought to talk about that are germane to our contest. One is, you'll notice in my endorsements, I'm supported by most all the police organizations. This is a very big difference between Mr. Meek and me. I think law enforcement plays a very important role, and he has been among those who have been diminishing the role of the police and believes that defunding is an appropriate strategy. Secondly,
That's untrue.
okay, we'll get into that in a minute.
Did I ever vote anything that said to defund the police or even public?
I don't know. You
state?
have a series of votes against the police, and they wouldn't endorse me if you were on track with them. I guess the second thing is, I think he's voted to decriminalize the drugs. I think they're a principal issue in our homelessness, in that and the lack of enforcement.
Talking about ballot
Yeah.
measure
You mean
110?
Measure 110?
Yeah, Measure 110.
How do you know how I voted
It
on
must
measure
have been-
110?
I think I had the research on that.
I assume you voted no on 110?
What year was that? That was
2020. It was about.
Yeah.
It was about.
It was, well, I voted no on it as a ballot measure. I wasn't in the legislature when it was considered.
But it didn't come to the legislature.
No, it wasn't a referendum.
Yeah.
It was an initiative.
Okay. Yeah.
Okay, here it is.
And also in sentencing, he has voted for reducing the sentences. And that's also part of what's contributed to all of this.
So let's speed this up. Who is your largest contributor to date? And then the same question for you.
I guess the caucus.
Okay?
Okay.
And how about?
Yeah, not the caucus. I would probably say maybe the Oregon Education Association. And that's what I wanted to say about education. While I know how important it is to all of our families, they endorsed me because they knew I will stand for them, and they didn't endorse this gentleman next to me.
Please, gentlemen.
Well, he wanted to throw the
When's the
cops at
last
me.
time the police endorsed a Democrat, and when's the last time the OA endorsed a Republican? So please.
They
Good point.
endorsed
Well,
me
thank you.
years
Don't
they
treat us
endorsed
like
me
children.
years ago,
Who,
actually.
OAA?
OEA
you
actually
running against?
endorsed me at one point, yeah. It was quite an
Who are you
amazing.
running
Okay. So
Yeah, so it's happened, but it's...
Senator Kennemer has made a couple.
Well, ORCOPS endorsed me in my primary. How about that?
Senator
He did.
Kennemer has raised a couple of points of distinction. Would you like to raise any points of distinction?
Yeah, the biggest point of distinction, I think I talked about these 4,000 doors. When I'm handing my hand over, they see my Planned Parenthood endorsement, and a lot of men, not only women, are saying, thank you for that, Mark, because we need a champion that's going to keep on defending women's rights to health care in this state. And I was part of the vote when he voted no in 2017 against the Reproductive Health Equity Act, that they know that I will stand to be the champion for them. So that's one big, huge distinction that a lot of voters are really caring about right now. Did you say you wanted to?
Sure.
Okay. The other is that I am both engaged with trying to continue investing in our education, and that is true of the Student Success Act that took a lot of blood, sweat, and tears. He calls it the cat tax, I call it the Student Success Act. He wants to defund that, he wants to eliminate that, he wants to roll it back. now is not the time to be disinvesting into the future of our kids and Oregonians. Those are big distinctions, and I think that's going to make a difference to voters in my district.
Can you both tell us a mistake that you made as a legislator?
Did you want me to talk about those? I mean, I think, don't I get some
Well,
time about his
Sure,
comments
sure.
about it?
Go ahead.
I guess on the topic of abortion, we have the most liberal abortion standards in the United States, according to Tina at least. I assume that's probably correct. My story is back when I was in graduate school, I was a flaming liberal, actually, and I was pro-abortion. And after I became a clinician, I worked with women who had been injured with that. And after a few of those, I found I could not, with good conscience, continue to support abortion. However, it's a topic that I don't campaign on, and frankly, consistent with the view that I've had about representing my people, with 71% of the people voting in support of abortion, I won't be voting if I make the difference. But if I don't make the difference, I always vote no, because I think that's the appropriate thing. In terms of investing in education, my dad was born an Oklahoma sharecropper, never attended a day of school. And Dad said, the way to get ahead is to get an education. I'm the first person in my family that ever graduated from college. I have a PhD. It's made a gigantic difference in my life. And I'm a big supporter of education, even endorsed as a Republican once by OEA. And so, I guess.
Ken?
Okay. Biggest mistake you made as a legislator?
Try to forget those things. I'm sorry, geez.
While you're thinking.
Yeah, please, I'm sorry. That shouldn't be tough. I have to admit, I'm not perfect. I sometimes kid that my middle name is Mary Poppins to remind myself that I do my fair share of mistakes, but I'm having trouble at this moment. I'm sorry. It's a great
The
question.
biggest mistake that I've made as a legislator is taking for granted that my colleagues will vote in favor of a policy based on the merits of what it will do and accomplish to help families. What I've learned is that sometimes you have to have quid pro quo, and I'm not a politically driven politician. I'm a servant leader. I want to do what's right for our community. Nobody has ever come into me and said, hey, can you vote on this? And what do you need in return? And believe me, my freshman year, I went into with the governor's, interview with her, and it was kind of, what are you working on, Mark? And I'm like, oh, I got this and this and this and this, and well, nothing was said, but let us know how we can help with that. And it wasn't until 2 years later, I'm like, oh, is that what that meant? And so my biggest mistake is that, and I don't trade my bills or concepts or ideas for anything, but I do know I have to be aware that my concepts and my priorities may not get passed based on the merits of what they will provide.
Okay. Did you come up with anything, Representative Senator?
So you can get back to us.
Yeah, what could I am embarrassed. I really ought to know that question. That's a darn good question, and I don't know when I've been hit with it before, and I just...
Give us a 30-second wrap up. Make it very quick, please. Tell us why you're the best person for this job. Representative, we'll start with you.
I'm the best person for this job because I'm the one that's working the hardest to understand what our community really wants. My opponent will say that he has experience and background, but he is not relevant anymore. He has not been engaged with our community the way that they need to be engaged with. The community has changed over the years in this past decade. I'm engaged at a fundamental level, organic level, meeting them where they are, business meetings, community meetings. And so I feel I will be the most effective to help them navigate as we're going through a new normal and helping our families get a good education, find a good job, and experience the American dream and become a homeowner.
Okay. Bill?
I guess Mark and I are different in a lot of ways. I think I already alluded to law enforcement, and I think that that's a key issue. I think also the support of legalizing drugs and some of this other stuff that is contributing to the problems that we have now. I think I have a more balanced view about how we need to operate, and we need to hold people responsible. We also need to provide psychotherapy. We need to have a balanced program, and I represent that balance. I represent a moderation. I'm just not a good liberal, and I don't think I'm a good ultra-conservative either. I'm kind of balanced, and I think I fit the character of our community, and I think that's the record I've had. And the best predictor of future behavior is past behavior.
Okay, last question is the fun question that we always ask each candidate. So if the world were going to end tonight and you could only eat one food
What would it be?
before the world ended, what would that food be? Senator?
I got to go first. Huh? It would be Tillamook mudslide ice cream.
Good choice.
All right. Representative?
I like that. Well, I've been gluten-free for about 10 years now due to dietary, not allergies, but just really important dietaries. So I'd probably go something
Gluten
yeah,
heavy.
I'd like a big old piece of fat apple pie. Yeah, jeez, yeah.
Okay, all right.
Gentlemen, thank you both for coming in. We really appreciate you taking the time. We know it's a busy season and you
Yeah.
ought to be out there knocking on doors.
That's right, that's right.
We really appreciate it. And our endorsements come out on the 19th.
19. Okay, perfect.
Great.